friend's remarks left a lasting impression on me, even after they were said. "Since you'll certainly never get married, Natalie, why don't you just have fun looking at me in my wedding dress?" My sister's insensitive comment hurt me and made me separate myself even more from the conflict within my family. However, my husband David suddenly revealed something shocking. He desired a divorce. A tragic turn of events occurred when an invitation to David's impending wedding arrived a year later. How further does he plan to humiliate me? I grasped the invitation in shock, thinking angrily. I found comfort in my kids, William and Jasmine, through it all. To me, they were everything. Intelligent, compassionate, and a continual source of pride. They supported me through the agony of fighting for custody when David and I got divorced. With determined looks on their faces, Jasmine and William stepped up to me while I was still processing the invitation. Jasmine firmly answered, "Don't worry, Mom." She and William exchanged a sly glance. "Just unwind and wait at home. Let us handle it." I couldn't help but be curious about what they had planned and a little anxious at the same time. I trusted my children despite my concerns. Like their father, who was intuitive and kind before everything fell apart, they had always been. I'm Natalie, and this year I turned 53. Last year, my husband David startled me by announcing that he could no longer live with me, which resulted in our abrupt divorce. I was totally taken by surprise because I had assumed that our marriage was going well. If I had unintentionally upset David, I couldn't stop wondering what I could have done wrong. My menopausal symptoms got worse because of this, which made me even more distressed. I met David, who is a few years older than me, at work where I helped him out as a salesperson as his office assistant. We eventually tied the knot. These days, he works hard as a sales director and has traveled abroad a lot. I left my job soon after we were married, so I could devote all of my time to taking care of David and our house, as he requested. Every day, I made sure he had time to relax on his days off. Jasmine, who works in research at a famous company, and William, who is enrolled in a prestigious institution and preparing to sit for the bar exam, are our two beautiful children. Desperate to comprehend, I kept asking David why we were getting divorced during the abrupt talks, but he steadfastly declined to explain, brushing off my entreaties as irreconcilable differences. My faith was destroyed, and I was left feeling incredibly let down by his lack of closure and his distance. Upon approaching 30 years of matrimony, I questioned what exactly I had perceived in David throughout that time. My kids were probably as shocked by the whole thing as I was, and they concluded that there was no point in attempting to reason with David. They helped me proceed with the divorce, and David eventually packed up and moved out of our house. This incident took place approximately half a year before our divorce. Jasmine broke the news that she had spotted Dad with Aunt Karen when she got home one day. My lone sister, Karen, moved into an apartment close to our neighborhood recently. She had come to see us once, but I recall being uncomfortable in that little meeting. I didn't engage her in conversation. Instead, I acted coldly, and she quickly left. She rarely came to see just the two of us, even when we were kids, so it was strange that she did. We were biological sisters, yet we were very different people. My sister also disliked me. She is currently unmarried after multiple marriages and divorces. Her capacity to adjust her attitude to suit the situation has always seemed disgusting to me. We lived close by, yet we never spoke to each other. Her choice to reside close to me, for no apparent reason, actually gave me the creeps. My heart was racing with this tale of David and my sister. Even as a little child, my sister had always been cruel and self-centered. She was skilled at hiding her meanness and bullying in ways that would go unnoticed by adults. It seemed like I was the one having difficulty most of the time when I sobbed because of her. She would pretend to be a good sister while consoling me in front of adults. A particularly memorable occurrence happened around Christmas, not long after I started primary school. We received dolls of a well-known animated character from our relatives. My sister was given the lively, tomboyish girl with black hair and a black clothing. The most well-liked by the kids was the one I got, the one with the blonde hair and the pink clothing. I felt ecstatic, happiness radiating from my eyes. However, my sister quickly decided she preferred mine after seeing it. My sister ignored my objections and reached out to me while the grown-ups were occupied speaking and making their way to the living room, saying, "Let me see that for a second." She snatched up my doll, and there was a horrible pop as the sparkly lace and sequin dress broke apart. It was destroyed in an instant while I was just admiring it moments before. I was frozen with shock, and then I started crying. I sobbed so hard that grown-ups nearby could hear me. Surprised, they wanted to know what had happened. "Natalie ripped her doll's dress, poor thing," my sister remarked, stroking my head as if nothing were wrong. "I'll give mine to her." My sister's performance deceived the adults, who complimented her on her kindness. Our parents scolded me for not taking better care of my present in the meanwhile. My sister handed me the doll with the black dress in front of everyone, and I had no choice but to take it. She even forced me to thank her. My sister merely grinned. My sister later received a brand new doll with pink clothing sent to our home. She continuously flashed it in front of me and exclaimed, "Look, isn't it nice?" My doll should have been the one. Things like these occurred frequently. Living with my sister became a significant stressor. She always seemed to take pleasure in causing me pain. I was nervous. I hoped she wasn't planning anything. Throughout middle and high school, my sister Karen rarely studied. Instead, she enjoyed hanging out with her friends and frequently partied late into the night, much to our parents' concern. Studying isn't my thing. She would occasionally stare at me as if mocking my dedication, but mostly she would say, "I'd rather do fun things that I can do now." I studied really hard to achieve academic excellence because our parents were quite concerned about Karen. Because of my good marks in middle school, I was selected to be the class representative. Those who were acquainted with Karen frequently expressed surprise and inquired, "Are you really Karen's sister?" Our parents were concerned about more than just her lack of academic focus. When Karen strolled the streets late at night, she would frequently result in police calls because she would spend hours loitering in front of Walmart with her suspicious pals. Karen didn't seem to mind that our parents always had a troubled and depressed appearance. She had even boldly declared, "One day, I'll marry rich, and everyone will thank me." Karen had a passable physical appearance, not stunning, but good enough to draw attention on occasion. But I thought Karen was at her most endearing in elementary school. She became more defiant as she grew older. She disobeyed school policies by staying out late, smoking discreetly, and wearing cosmetics. She used inexpensive makeup that clearly harmed her skin and hair, but she didn't notice how she looked. Everyone in Karen's closest friends said it was unrealistic for her to marry a wealthy man when she began drinking. I had my first relationship during my freshman year of high school. Karen just so happened to walk by the fast food restaurant where we were going on a date. She came over to smile at us like she was someone else entirely. "Is this your pal, Natalie?" My partner was surprised when Karen stated, "Introduce him to your big sister." I felt much more uncomfortable and horrified. My naive partner presented himself, and Karen never stopped grinning at him. He must have believed that we were sisters. I got up immediately and suggested we head to the movies so we could avoid Karen as much as possible. However, this proved to be a grave error. Karen seemed to be shocked and exclaimed, "What a coincidence! That was a movie I also wanted to see." I didn't think she would go that far, but she was going to ruin our date. Just as I was about to say no, my boyfriend, in an attempt at being kind, suggested that since we were already there, we watch it together. It was unbelievable to me. I was really looking forward to seeing this movie. Karen, seeing my annoyance, changed her approach and said, "But Natalie might find it bothersome if I join," projecting a disappointed expression. It was obscene, in my opinion, rather than merely unpleasant. I grudgingly agreed, though, because I didn't want to look bad in front of my lover. "It's okay." The date to the movie ended disastrously. My boyfriend inadvertently ended up sitting between my sisters and me in the dark, since I was unable to concentrate on the movie. It seemed that Karen had grasped his hand, something I knew nothing about. My partner and I split up around 2 weeks later, with him saying he'd moved on to someone else. I recognized her right away as Karen. For a short while, Karen played around with my ex-boyfriend and then promptly dumped him. I later learned that the encounter caused him to become afraid of women. I questioned Karen about it, questioning how she could so easily take advantage of someone else's boyfriend. "He expressed his feelings to her on his own," she said, glancing at me nonchalantly. I became enraged and yelled at her, accusing her of luring him into the movie and then heartlessly abandoning him. Karen erupted in laughter, claiming she was annoyed to see me happy and that she didn't keep track of such things. She made fun of me, saying I was overly arrogant to ever be in a relationship. I asked her why she constantly did such nasty things to me and what she had against me, and tears welled up in my eyes. In response, Karen retorted coldly, "Because you're my sister. Perhaps the idea of you being happier than me is too much for me to handle." I realized that day that I would never have my sister. After my husband David left, Karen paid me an unexpected visit about a month later. I realized right once that she was there to spread rumors about my divorce. She made an attempt to be kind and inquired, "How are you doing, Natalie?" I felt uneasy with her touch on my shoulder. "What is your desire, Karen?" I said, seeming to be angry. Then she showed an abrupt interest in seeing my kids, William and Jasmine, for whom she had never previously shown concern. I was in disbelief. She was unaware that it was a weekday afternoon and Jasmine was at work, while William was at college. Maybe that wasn't shocking, since Karen had never had her own children and had been married 3 times and divorced twice. "They're at work and school, obviously," I retorted icily. She appeared bored, as though she needed an excuse to talk to the children about something in particular. She sat down on the couch and started talking without pausing. "You recently went through a divorce, and it appears that I'm going that route too," she said. I sighed to myself, vowing never to do this again. However, I told myself that it's none of my concern, and she's free to do as she pleases. Not that I've ever met any of her ex-husbands. As she frequently boasted, Karen was married to a terrific catch, an airline pilot. It's unclear how they got together, but they appeared sincere in their love. I can't even begin to count how many times she boasted about it then. "Since you'll probably never get married, why don't you just have fun looking at me in my wedding dress?" she asked. But even though her husband's parents lived with my sister, they were never happy with each other. Her husband, who was supposed to be her protection, was seldom home because he was too busy flying. My sister's in-laws were enraged when she began going out and having fun because she was bored. Even her husband eventually lost patience with her and had her ejected. A younger man she met at the pub where she used to work became her second husband. He appeared quiet and went about his own business. They were genuinely in love at first, but then money began pilfering from the safe in the store, to which only the pair had the keys. Her spouse was so shy that he initially failed to suspect my sister. He tried to push it away, thinking that it would work itself out. However, after more than $20,000 vanished, he eventually faced her. "Why do you hold me responsible? What if there was only a computation error or something else?" My sister dismissed it with a stubborn air. Her husband experienced anxiety when faced with such a situation. However, it was discovered that Karen was the one stealing the money. Her husband took to installing security cameras, which recorded my sister slinking to the safe late at night. The moment she took the money was captured on camera flawlessly. If she gave the money back, he promised not to call the police. Naturally, he also requested a divorce, which put a stop to my sister's unsuccessful second marriage. She currently resides with her third husband, a harsh-tempered carpenter. My parents were hoping that this time would be different, especially because they were the ones who reimbursed Karen for the money she had taken from her former husband's safe, in addition to the alimony. When their relationship is going well, it's incredibly well. But my sister and her current husband are strong-willed and have short-fused tempers, so their arguments are very severe. Their rental unit has been the scene of multiple reports for loud arguments. My sister began talking about considering a third divorce today. I can't really stop her once she makes up her mind because she simply keeps going. Strangely enough, she seemed rather content when discussing her divorce. William said, "I'll go to your place, Mom." What? I was confused as I glanced at my son. What was he going to do with his attendance? "We'll attend, not for the occasion, though." My kids looked at my perplexity and smiled comfortingly. "Leave it to us. Don't worry." William rubbed my shoulder. "Just relax at home, Mom." This is how my two kids reassured me. Yet my son and daughter both shot each other with important looks. I was fascinated by what they were planning to do, even though I was terrified. My two kids comforted me, and there was a sense of expectation in there as well. I gave them permission to go to the wedding. For my sister, it was her fourth marriage, and David was getting married again. When I heard it would be a fancy affair in a 5-star hotel, I was taken aback. My sister had apparently insisted on it. Even for his second marriage, David, a senior sales director who aspired to be an executive, had to present his new bride in a spectacular way. In addition, my sister had made plans for a bridal gown to be created to order. Her lack of shame at her age astounded me, and I felt sorry for David because he was so easily tricked by my sister. My sister was manipulating my husband, and after she got her way, it was typical of her to casually brush David aside. She was just attracted to him because he was my spouse. What was mine was always what my sister wanted. Jasmine interrupted as they were getting ready for the nuptials, saying, "Mom, actually, Dad messaged us last night. He declared his desire to have custody of William and me." "What?" I let out a shocked gasp. Was this his next attempt to kidnap my kids? That is absurd. "We're not infants anymore," William mockingly said. Despite being married multiple times, my sister was never able to have children. I always felt that any child of hers would inevitably be miserable, and I also felt that God knew this. However, I never thought she would target my kids. She was quite excited to meet for that reason. Now everything makes sense. They reassured me that we would never visit her home, and then gave me a tender hug. "See you later." When the children returned home hours later, they were beaming with happiness. They claimed it was amazing as they played back a video they had shot. The image of a wedding taking place at a 5-star hotel was quite refreshing. My sister, no matter how old, was giddy with joy while wearing a garish bridal gown. "I'm overjoyed that you two attended the ceremony," she said in a sickeningly sweet voice. "Call me Mom." Jasmine appeared as though she would soon gag out of horror. David, meanwhile, smoked a cigarette and made a sad look while sitting in a corner of the room. It was the first time William had seen his father smoke, which caught him off guard. He was jiggling his leg nervously all the time, as if he was annoyed. He did not appear like a groom at all, and he was a little terrifying. The kids left the wedding suite early, feeling uneasy. The ceremony then got underway. It was an odd wedding between the stoic groom David and the excessively exuberant bride Karen. There was tension on the faces of all the guests. The reception followed. In a happy mood, my sister was showing David too much affection. The guests were unsure of where to turn when they saw the over 50 bride acting in this manner. David pushed Karen away, aware that his colleagues were observing. The speaker attempted to inject some humor. The MC declared, "It's time for the bride to change her dress." My sister came out, and William went straight to the stage. Everybody appeared perplexed. "Congratulations on your marriage, Dad and Aunt Karen," he said. The attendees thought it was a son's speech of congratulations. William sipped calmly from his glass, yet what came out of his mouth was totally out of the blue. "6 marriages between the two of you is not typical." "Yes, Aunt Karen, I understand. You took your sister's husband. That is rather minimal. It seems like you were never normal." Immediately, the room was filled with murmurs. Their response made sense considering the majority of the attendees were ignorant of this information. "I'm going to read over some of my mother's diaries today. It turns out that today's bride stole her spouse from my mom. It's funny. The bride is her sister after all. 6 months ago, Karen arrived to tell me she was getting married to my ex-husband. She always got along with my spouse. Therefore, I was forced into a divorce. Thus, that was the main focus." David paled as he heard that. William went on. "My aunt applied for a part-time job at David's company, pretending it was a mistake to get close to him. She lied to David and repeatedly tempted him, accusing him of being defamatory about him on social media. Even though I'm not on social media, Karen told me that there were posts demeaning David. She apparently made a phony account in my name." Regretfully, David thought all of this. David began to shake where he sat at the groom's table. He mumbled, "So I was deceived after all." No one cheered Karen, the bride, as she returned after changing into her new attire. It was pretty ludicrous, the gold dress and tiara she was wearing. Karen was grinning widely, anticipating a round of applause, but she became agitated at the venue's poor response. "Is everyone okay? Why do you all have that kind of stare at me?" she questioned, growing agitated and perplexed. She was unaware of what was going on, but the retaliation didn't stop there. Jasmine got up next. "Aunt Karen, we have a sincere present for you." Surprised, Karen exclaimed, "Huh?" and cautiously peered around. The doors opened at William's signal, and a group of men arrived who were obviously not guests despite their casual attire. Aunt Karen's first spouse is on the right. He recently got married again and rose to the position of executive at work. Her second husband is the next man. Following his divorce with Karen, he wrote a best-selling book. With his new wife, he has a beautiful child and resides in a brand-new mansion. Karen seemed stunned at first, but as Jasmine went on, her cheeks brightened red. Her teeth were clenched so tightly that it sounded as though we could hear them grinding. My kids grinned at their aunt's response. William declared, "And lastly, the third husband, a carpenter." "That's just someone who used to get into problems a lot," Karen interrupted forcefully. "He will never achieve success." I triumph. But William scoffed and said, "Aunt Karen, that's not very nice." The third husband was a carpenter, but he remarried the daughter of his boss, who owns a worldwide construction company, Jasmine said, nodding in accord. Now that he is the vice president, he is prosperous and busy. Aunt Karen, we hope you have happiness as well. Karen paled, realizing that she had misjudged her second and third husbands and that they had achieved considerably greater success than she had. She was taken aback. All of the sisters' ex-husbands were now well-known and wealthy. They were dressed casually, but they looked respectable. Though they remained silent, it was obvious that they felt sorry for Karen. Her temper erupted as she thought, "Now I'm so frustrated to see them so successful." She threw the bouquet she was holding to the ground out of fury. She was uncontrollably hysterical. "It's only that David will become a sales manager, right? After all, he was Natalie's husband." What a mistake, she exclaimed, pounding her fist loudly against the table. Don't mess around, David screamed, reddening his cheeks. It seems as though he had had enough. Because that's the way it is? Does that imply you can build me a mansion and become vice president? The bride and groom got into an argument, and it was a wild situation. The guests at the wedding looked shocked and disbelieving as the bride and groom began to argue. Among the attendees were several of David's co-workers from the company, who realized that their chances of moving up in their careers, or maybe losing their jobs, were in doubt. My sister then let out a yell. Enough already! Don't get carried away just because everything is going nicely for you all. I even considered having you as my child. The kids angrily disagreed with what their sister had said. Absolutely not. Someone else entered. Karen's new boyfriend is this, ladies and gentlemen. While seeing the groom, David, Karen was also seeing other people. But I believe the day will come when he marries her for the 6th time. Everyone's attention was quickly drawn to the new partner. There was a brief commotion as he left the scene, looking shy and with a pale face. Amidst all of this confusion, David became irrationally angry. With a yell, he seized my sister's arm and asked, "How much longer do you think you can fool me? I will be suing you for alimony as we are divorcing. My employment with the organization has come to an end, and I will also be pursuing damages." The host hurried in the midst of the turmoil, and the guests began to leave one by one, frustrated. David and my sister Karen, looking very dapper in their matching wrinkled tuxedos and untidy hair, were the only things left. Jasmine and William gave each other a high five upon realizing this and exclaimed, "We did it." David and my sister, of course, immediately got divorced. Despite my sister's tears and pleas, David remained firm in his position, fearful that she would have to pay alimony. With a great deal of rage, he confronted Karen and asked how she could have lied to him so much about me. Then he suddenly broke down in tears. Jasmine and William were shocked by this emotional demonstration as they remained nearby to watch. I was in error. David sobbed as he admitted, "I did horrible things to Natalie. She probably won't forgive me, but I need to apologize somehow." The kids looked at each other. They understood, in spite of everything, that he had been a decent father from the start and had only been duped by Karen. The kids felt that even though their family dynamic might never be the same again, they should tell me that David has apologized. After the ceremony, they made their way back home, where they were relieved to hear brilliant laughter resounding from the entrance. I was relieved to hear it even. "Good to see you again. What was the outcome?" Observing the triumphant expressions on Jasmine and William's faces, I inquired. They showed me the captured footage one by one, and I was both horrified and strangely happy. I still couldn't express how horrible Karen was. After things calmed down, Jasmine said something. I was confused after William's shocking revelation that Dad wanted to apologize. William offered encouraging words, saying that since Dad sincerely wanted to apologize but didn't demand forgiveness, I should give it some thought. I gathered the guts to meet David with such amazing kids at my side. It seemed sense that he would appear unkempt and lethargic outside after the tumultuous wedding. I had heard that some of his company's executives, understanding their career prospects were ruined, left the wedding with bitter expressions. "I was an idiot, Natalie. I really apologize," David remarked, and that was sufficient in my opinion. He described how my sister had deceived him as well. "Karen will pay me alimony, and I'll give it all to you," he said. I slowly nodded. "My sister also deceived you." I firmly said, "Goodbye, David," and shut the front door. David remained there for some time before eventually turning to leave. Karen, the source of all this chaos, is now living an unstable life after being dumped by both David and her new partner. She struggled as a convenience store clerk after losing her part-time work, frequently receiving reprimands from the management. She was made fun of by the younger staff members, and she often broke down in tears. She even attempted working at a nightclub to make ends meet, but the patrons always wanted someone else. They liked younger ladies. She worked at the club too, knowing she had to pay alimony with a pinched face and gritted teeth. This was probably going to be her life for a while. I, for one, lead a contented and tranquil life with my children. William is performing well on his legal examinations, and we are excited about what lies ahead for him. I'm overjoyed that my kids have committed to always treasure me.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.